Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins, and it's a pleasure to be joined by Hristina Racheva. Hristina, you're very welcome to the show, and I want to let people know that you spent more than 12 years or more at this stage in global organizations, whether that's the European Commission, that's a pretty big one, Google, that's a huge one, Skyscanner, brands that people know for sure. And you led localization, product, and maybe some experimentation teams as well. Today, however, you're also a somatic guide and a nervous systems educator. So, fascinated to hear a little bit about that. And I know that you're helping individuals and leaders to maybe reconnect with that, hopefully inner wisdom that we have to lead and to live maybe a little bit more authentically in today's world. So, Hristina, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting this intro as well. And yeah, everything you said, it's true. Thank you. And it's
That's
a lot.
great. Yeah, it's great. It's a lot. Yeah. And I want to ask you about that if I can, Hristina, because you've had an incredible journey from leading those high performing teams, whether it was global tech companies, but now becoming a somatic guide and a nervous systems educator. To some people, they're going to be saying, well, what's that about? So could you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to make that transition? What was the turning point for you? And how do you go from all that localization, teamwork, pressure to semantic guiding?
Yeah. Thank you. One thing that I like to say, somewhat jokingly, but also very true, is that I've sort of always led two parallel lives, like two streams. So one was my life in tech, global tech companies. As you said, I was leading localization at Skyscanner. After a while, I moved into product management, and that's when I was leading product experimentation at Skyscanner. And I really loved being in these spaces. Of course, localization, the cultural aspect. I loved leading programs, leading teams. I loved the strategic piece, building visions and strategy. But again, I've always had this second life, and I've always been fascinated by spirituality, consciousness, holistic practices. So they were always a big part of me, or curious about them. A few years ago, I trained as a yoga teacher. I've done coaching programs, and it's always been that exploration of different modalities so that I can really support myself. And then I started offering coaching to others. And it wasn't until actually maybe now 3 years ago when I went deeper into those spaces. So 3 years ago, I had a burnout. I had to take 4 months off. And at that point, I started looking into what burnout is. And there are a lot of different ways people experience burnout. But one thing I think that's common is that it impacts us on all levels, like mental, intellectual, body, physiological. So for me, it was clear that if I wanted to support myself out of that, I had to continue using all those different modalities that I had already curiosity about. So breath work, meditation, really a lot of different ways to continue really support myself come out of that state of burnout. And at that point, I discovered somatic work. So that's a modality that helps you connect with the body. It believes that we experience and process things through the body. And mind tells us one story, but the body has a different way of relating to us, different stories, and we're so cut off from it that we don't hear it. And actually, that's another reason why it's so easy for some people to get into a burnout, because the body is telling us there is a boundary that you're crossing, you're too tired, you're overwhelming yourself, but we're so disconnected of those voices that we keep pushing and pushing, and the sound or the voices get louder and louder until it's so loud that we can't ignore it. So that's how I went into somatic work. My first program was a year-long program where it was for me as an individual to do this work, but also to train as a facilitator. And it's at that moment when I also moved from localization into product management. So after I came back from my burnout, And it was fascinating. I could see this work because it was really a deep program where I was doing that on myself. I could see how it changed how I showed up at work. At that point, I was still doing career coaching for people in localization. And I could see the conversations we were having about career and jobs and workplace. They were less about the workplace itself, but more about how do I show up? How am I being impacted? What am I holding back? So I really started to see the nervous system, the state of our nervous system, as really the foundation for how we show up at work. So I continued my studies, and maybe for about 2.5 years, and it became something so transformational, so powerful. And I was so fascinated by this work that I decided that I could take the leap and try to go into the space, and offer this work. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my real story.
Well, thank you for giving us that context. It's very helpful. And you're talking about something that often isn't talked about a lot because, in today's busy workplace, there's more and more jobs, there's more and more tasks. It becomes overwhelming for some people. And then a lot of people, hit a burnout, don't they? They hit a point where it's just too much. And it's great that you can share that with us and also talk about this semantic work as well. And I wanted to ask you, if I can, about it doesn't just change your career path, which is obviously, but maybe your relationship with what is success and what is self-expression. Am I right in saying that, Hristina?
Yeah, it's a great point. Maybe just one point. So the word is somatic. And I know as a linguist, semantic kind of alludes to the semantics, so it's very easy
Oh,
to
that's a
trace
great
that.
point for a localization audience. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
The somatic work is really
And
important.
another maybe for our localization audience,
Yeah.
actually, somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body. But the lived experience from within, the embodied experience of what's happening within me right now. So yeah, somatic. Thank you. And yes, back to your question, a really great point that it was not something that just changed my career, but actually the reason it changed my career is because it changed me and how I experience the world around me and work really. One thing that I love to talk about with the somatic work is we often talk about confidence and presence, and they come from, and there are all those hacks and frameworks and mind shifts, but they're so on the surface, they're on the mind, and the mind can't reach that deep. If it could, and if we could use hacks and frameworks, we would all be confident. Well, we're not, because it's not the mind. And from this work, and even when I talk about it, maybe you notice I became quite aware, my body changed immediately. So what this work does is makes you aware of where you're responding, where to the world, where you're insecure, where you respond in these automatic ways from your nervous system. And you can almost take all this back, integrate that, and you're able to connect with yourself from a deeper presence, a deeper knowing, a deeper trust, embodiment of yourself. But whatever the word is, I don't like using the word confidence because it alludes a bit to that almost like fake imposed way. But that inner knowing and confidence, it suddenly, if you think of this metaphor, I like the metaphor of the tree. So if you're like this strong, firm tree, the external changes of the environment, wind and storm, they don't impact you. You're there and nothing can take you out of your balance. Or even if it does, it's very little. But if you are rather weak or unbalanced yourself, even little winds can take you out of balance. So this work really brings you in your presence, in your knowing, where you're not so impacted by external perceptions of you, for example. So now success is not anymore performance. It's I want to achieve something because I enjoy that, because I'm curious about it, but it doesn't come from a place where I need to prove myself, where I need to get validation. So there is like all of those I was going to say little, but they're not little ways that it really impacts how we experience ourselves in the world.
And it's a real interesting contrast in terms of the way that that helps you to think and be, because with your, I suppose, rich background in localization and the global tech type organizations that you're working with, you had to navigate cross-cultural environments, relationships, teams, often high pressure roles. Did that help shape your understanding of this new sort of embodied leadership, or not?
I think what that environment helped is becoming more aware of different cultural experiences or way people show up, right? We talk
Mm.
about what was it? Erin Meyer's book on communication, Hofstede's framework on how different cultures show up and relate to each other. So I think that has helped me to start be more open to people expressing themselves differently, having different needs. But it wasn't until I actually started doing this work that I started, well, familiarizing myself and thinking about embodied leadership. And maybe it's a good time to also talk a bit about what that is.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, because you get various people coming to the embodied leader, and
Mm,
I suppose that that helps support people with leading with a presence, being more self-aware, maybe. And I suppose maybe you could just unpack that a little bit for us. You know, what
yeah.
is there any sort of consistency that you see in people that come for this type of work, or not? Tell us a bit more about that.
Mhm. I will share a bit what embodied leadership is, and then a bit the people that come to this space. I was recently actually thinking about this. I'm building my program for leaders, and I started to think a bit more depth about leadership and how we perceive it, and yeah, how we think about it. I think in practical terms, when we think of leaders in the formal role of a leader, there is a lot about bringing in alignment teams and strategy and vision and delegation and forward thinking. And all of those things are what a leader does. Sometimes we talk a bit what a leader or how a leader shows up. And that's a bit this authentic leadership. So how they show up when they do what they're supposed to do. But I think we limit a bit the authentic leadership concept. Oftentimes we think of authentic leadership as sharing how you feel, being vulnerable, revealing your weaknesses to create a bit of connection. I think that's a very small part of authentic leadership. Authentic leadership is also like knowing my values, what is important to me, and then can I respond and act in alignment with my values? Can I be authentic in that sense if there is something I want to share in a meeting or someone's being mistreated and that's not okay with me? Can I speak up, or am I worried what others will think of me when I do that? Or am I worried I might have some repercussions? So it's a bit of that, am I really in alignment of who I want to be? And then is the embodied leadership. So it's almost like of layers. So if the regular leading is what I do, the authenticity is how I show up when I do what I do. The embodied is who am I in this? And it's really a bit of your presence with yourself. For example, how do people feel in your presence? How do they feel when you leave them? Are you able to be with your experiences without being overwhelmed, like emotions? And can you allow people to be in their experiences without taking it personal, without trying to fix them? So there is a lot of that invisible presence. And that goes back to the nervous system. There is this concept of limbic resonance, where our nervous system is wired for connection. And it's sort of constantly, automatically, without our awareness, it scans our environment for safety and it connects with others. And I have a very powerful example. I used to have this manager a few years ago, And they were really friendly and supportive, always very smiley. And yet I just didn't feel I can trust them. Like I felt there was something off. And I didn't know what it is because other people were saying they were okay in their presence. I knew there was something though. And for over a year and a half while they were my manager, I was never able to connect truly with them because I just felt that space and distance. And unfortunately, I was right because just after I got back from my burnout, this manager treated me really poorly. And then I started hearing stories of other people, how they had experienced them, of like they were being maybe removed from the company, they were being demoted, they had conflict. So I realized it's this thing that we call usually intuition, but it's the nervous system. So it's not how you show up. It's not on the outside, like being friendly or supportive. It's your actual inner state that other people connect to. So that sort of feeling there's something off without knowing what it is, it's actually the nervous system. So you can't basically hide. If you're off, you can't fake it.
Yeah.
So that's a bit that embodiment and
Yeah, well,
that presence.
yeah, thank you, Christina. And you shared quite a few sort of little gems there, some great points. And I particularly like when you were talking about, the leadership aspect of it. And people, we hear a lot about being an authentic leader, but it
Mm,
is sort of surface level. And as you say, it's about coming up and being a bit more authentic, but relating it back to, well, what are your values and what's important to you? And that sort of embodied leadership, I suppose, takes it to a more I was going to say important area, but the right area, I suppose. That really
mm,
helps. So thank you for sharing that. And I suppose, look, we know that through your work in localization, you've built products, workflows, community. You've had to manage many teams over the years. But now you're guiding these, if I can call them body-based type practices.
mhm,
Is there a bridge that you have to form between the strategic thinking and maybe somatic awareness in the coaching? Is that something you have to be
mm.
mindful of?
It's a great question. And I feel like this question comes from a place of, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, of a place of as if the somatic and the body awareness and the emotions don't have a place in the strategic or don't contribute to being strategic. So
Well,
sort of
yeah, yeah, no, I think
there is
it's
a
a great question.
separation.
It's a great clarification point, because
Mhm,
when you've got busy people working in complex, maybe pressurized environments, it kind of pulls you away from the type of work that we're talking about, and it pulls you into the deadline, the requirement, what the customer wants, the
mhm.
strategy, as opposed to the other things. And I was just interested in your take on, well,
Yeah,
actually, there's a direct connection, or there's a bridge here that we need to
yeah,
be
yeah.
mindful of, because ultimately we're talking about humans and individuals that are performing, right?
Yeah, and there is connection. And I'll just give a very little again introduction of the nervous system. Maybe some of the audience has heard of this, what we call survival responses: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I know they're concepts that are now getting popular, but maybe there isn't enough understanding. But basically, because the nervous system is its main purpose is to keep us safe, and it scans our environment constantly to find cues of danger or safety. And if detects potential danger, it triggers an automatic responses so that we can address that danger. The important bit first is that none of this happens cognitively. Neither the recognition of what is danger and threat, neither nor the response to it. All of that happens through the nervous system and through the body. And the response to it, to potential danger could be physical, but also someone being rude to you or someone giving you feedback, or so it's a relational as well. It's not just physical, but relational interaction. And when the system detects a potential threat, it automatically responds in one of those four ways: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that have been helpful for us in our early developmental years to respond to stressful environments. So actually, we have very little, if we don't have that awareness, we have very little control over our responses. An example, without going too deep, I used to be incredibly defensive. I used to take things very personally when I was given maybe feedback, when I was giving given suggestions to my work, or someone expressed a bit of a different opinion to mine. For my system, this was so scary because remember, the nervous system is responsible for our connection and safety. So someone criticizing you, it's a bit to threat to that connection. You might lose that connection. So my automatic response was that fight response, which comes up as a defense, as a sort of attack back. And that was not something I could control. Like I could see myself taking over me. Because again, these are automatic without our cognitive awareness. So kind of coming back to that question, we all have those automatic responses to one way or another. And they take over in those challenging, difficult, high-stakes situations. So becoming aware of your own ways of responding is already allowing you to be present in a different way and not to be sort of subjected or out of really not having the control over how you respond.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, Christina. Thank you. And I was going to ask you about, when you look back over your career, um, there must have been signs that you needed a more embodied nervous system aware approach, but you've sort of illustrated that perfectly for me. So thank you. I want to talk now, if I can, about the workshops and the one-to-one programs. I want to get into that a little bit because you design these workshops, these programs, as I mentioned, that integrate the somatic practices.
Mm-hmm.
And, what are some of the most surprising or potentially powerful transformations that you see with the people that you work with on these type of programs? Because you've been doing it a while now, and you've had a lot of people going through. So what are you seeing? What's the sort of feedback? What are the transformations that you're witnessing?
Yeah, thank you. I love this question because I keep getting feedback and shares from my clients. And as much as I'm so convinced about the power of this work, every time I get surprised and amaze myself of how people benefit from it. And it's, your question had like powerful ways that people have experienced this or transformed. Maybe one a little sort of call out. This work is very, very soft and gentle. And the shifts are actually on the surface, they look very small. And I'm going to give an example, but they're very powerful underneath in a way. So you'll see what I mean. Just a client currently that I'm working with, after our second session, so in one-to-one, I offer this 8-week program. So at the end of our second session, she usually she has these sessions during her work day, somewhat during her lunch break. So you can imagine, she's been working for 4 hours, pauses, comes into our call, it's online, and then she's, finishes the call, goes back to work. So I asked her at the end of the session, how are you feeling now at the end of it? And she said, someone amazed as well herself, she said, you know what? I know there's a lot of work I need to do. I know all of it is important, but I don't care. And it's not from a space of I don't care, I don't give a shit about it, but it's from a place of there is that space that I can see this with a space and a distance. I can see that I have work to do. I can see that that's important, that it's difficult, but it doesn't make me get caught up in the whatever that is for you, like the anxiety, the worry, the overwhelm. It's with that space and distance. And it's a bit an example that I gave for myself, how before when I would hear feedback or different opinion, I would immediately be overtaken and respond. Now I have space. Like all of those things are now just facts, just statements. They're not a reflection and they don't impact me in that way. And again, it sounds so small, but imagine living life with that space and distance and not being so caught up or overwhelmed.
Yeah, that sounds much better.
Right.
Well, look, as we come towards the end of our time together, I want to squeeze in another quick question for you. And I'd like to leave our audience, people watching or listening to us around the world, and obviously the localization audience. Is there any advice that you want to give to people working in careers that are, they're all sort of fast paced and fast moving and complicated type work that we're all involved in now? It was busy enough, and then AI came along and made it even busier and more things to think about. Um,
Yeah.
is there any advice you'd like to leave us with? Any parting thoughts and anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up, Hristina?
Yeah. It's a very good point, and I know it's so hard to be telling people there's so many ways you can support yourself. There's so many things you do when they're already so overwhelmed and there's so much going on. So one very small thing that, again, it's so simple that we don't do that is pausing throughout the day and just pause, close your eyes, take a breath, and just check in with yourself. What do I need right now? What do I feel and what do I need? It's just as simple as that, because how many times you're hungry and you realize 2 hours past your lunchtime that you're starving, but you were not even aware, and you would have probably been hungry 2 hours ago. Going to the bathroom, going for a break, those things are so basic, and again, we override them. So it's literally, what do I need right now? What would help me right now? And again, so simple, just taking a 5-minute break, drinking water, going for a walk. It's starting to check in with ourselves, to ask ourselves, we're going to hear things that we were not aware, and start supporting ourselves.
Yeah, I really like that. And I love the word we override. You were sort of, we kind of override the things that are important to us. And that little pause, as you mentioned,
Yeah,
just to check in with ourselves and say, what do I need right now? And it might be that little break, or uh,
yeah,
some drink, something to drink, bit of water, or
hmm,
maybe just taking a moment just to
yeah.
recalibrate. Almost, that's such
Hmm.
such an important
And
point.
they're small, but we're always going, we look for the next big thing,
Mm.
the big transformation, all the big shiny things. But that's where the work starts, because if you don't know what you need and how you feel right now, how can you support yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up, Christina?
Yeah, I guess just the ways that I work, as you mentioned. So I have the one-to-one container where we individually work towards connecting better with ourselves, like answering this question, what do I need? Surprisingly, it's also simple but very difficult, and learning ways to support and build that capacity. I have the embodied leadership program, so that's for teams where we see how the state of the nervous system shows up in how you interact with others, how you respond. Just the example I gave about being defensive. And then the last piece I have, I recently launched a course. So a lot of this work, it's hard, of course, for our mind of wanting proof and evidence. It's hard to just be like, that's all it takes, just to ask myself what I need, like just to touch myself. Is that all? So in order to support critics and people that need more evidence, I created this workshop. It's a self-paced course where it guides you through what is the nervous system, why it's responsible for how you experience the world, because we said it's not the mind, it's really the body and the nervous system that's responsible. And then what happens when we've been exposed to chronic stress, to traumatic experiences, and then how it's only through the body we can truly support ourselves. So that's a course that I just launched, and I'm happy to share a discount code for your audience. One thing that we'd say in this space, education equals regulation. So even just knowing that, even just knowing your ways and patterns of showing up is so powerful already, that awareness. So these are some of the ways that I currently offer my work, and I guess you also share my website in the notes. So yeah.
Oh, that's good. And if people want to reach out and connect with you directly, where's the best place to point them to? Is it your website? Is it LinkedIn? Where would we send them
Both,
to?
yeah,
Okay.
both with the website and the LinkedIn, whatever is more convenient. Yeah.
Okay. We'll make sure we include those in the notes for the episode. And thank you for sharing with our audience a little code if they're interested in finding out further about this. But such an important topic, and great that we can talk about it in the complex work life that we all seem to have today. It's so important. And that brings us, unfortunately, to the end of today's discussion. And I want to, first of all, thank everybody who's watching or listening to this episode around the world. Thank you very much indeed for tuning in. I hope that you'll join me back here for some more episodes of VistaTalks, where once again, we'll be talking to some interesting people with some very interesting topics, just like Hristina. But Hristina, thank you for being on the show today. It's been wonderful to talk to you again.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this very powerful work. Thank you.